Hi guys, many of you don't know me. This is Mickey. It's Thursday afternoon and I'm recording this message in a far-off land, a place where people practice exotic customs and speak a language that's very difficult to learn. Now, some of you may have heard of Houston, Texas. Some of you may have not, but that's where I've lived in the past 25 or so years since I left Arkansas. And I have to say it's the greatest place for me to be in the world. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about why Christ on campus is so very important to me, and I have a story to tell. It has some ups and downs, but in the end, I think we'll all see that there's a point to be made. It starts on August 10th, 2016. I was working out in the evening, and I got a message that I needed to go directly home and that I needed to call my mother. As most of you realize, when you receive a message of this type, it's not going to be good news, and in this case, it was not good news at all. I found out from another family member that my older brother had driven his car from California to Missouri. He had checked into a hotel room there, and he had shot and killed himself. This was devastating news for my mother. She had lost her child. It was very difficult for me to accept as well. My brother and I had been very, very close when we were young. We had a lot of the same interests. We played baseball together. We went fishing together. My brother was the first person that took me to the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville to show me around, the greatest university in the country, right? And I eventually did end up enrolling at the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, and that was where I eventually met Christ on campus. My brother was kind of a mentor for me because my dad was not around very much when I was growing up. I loved him and I appreciated him for the things that he did for me. We reacted to another thing that had happened to both of us that we shared in common differently. Unfortunately, the other thing that we had in common was that we had both been abused by a close family member in different ways when we were very young. I want to tell my story first and then talk about how that's a little bit different from my brother's story. I originally was very angry and depressed as a child. It's normal for children to react this way. That went on for a long time. By the time I was in high school, I questioned everything. I began to feel that life had no meaning and that I would be better off dead. That went along for several years. I looked around to find some real meaning or a reason to exist or something that would help me be at peace, and I never could. So there reached a point in my life where I literally was at the end of my rope. I entered college as a person who was ready to try anything and everything to find some meaning and some peace and something that really fulfilled my life in any way. Now, like a lot of young folks, I tried many different things to do that. At that time, and I suppose nowadays too, there is a cultural push in media and everywhere to lead people to believe that sexual relationships are a way to lead a fulfilling, a meaningful, and exciting life. So I jumped in head first. I had different casual sexual relationships with different folks. I found that it was exciting for a moment, but in the end I found that I felt unfulfilled and empty. I have to say that this is not an error that just young people make, though. I'm 47 years old now, and there are people my age or older who continue to believe that sex is the meaning in life. Sex can be a very special way to communicate your love to a person that you've devoted your life to. It's not fulfillment in and of itself. I tried alcohol. I come from a family of whiskey drinkers, and I found that I liked whiskey very much. So after drinking a while, I found that I would almost always start fighting when I started drinking. And I came to find out that when I'm drunk, I'm not nearly as good a fighter as I believe myself to be. So that escapade or investigation or experiment didn't last very long. I tried drugs. There were many of my friends at that time who got together and smoked or ingested or injected different types of drugs, and so I had to try that out with them. I really found it did nothing for me. The unfortunate thing is that when I told them that I wasn't interested in doing that, they turned me away. They believed that I would be some type of narc or report them to authorities, and even though that wasn't my intention, they rejected me. At first I was very hurt, and I felt that there must be something wrong with me since my friends were rejecting me. Later on I realized, hey, I'm really a great person, and if they're rejecting me, there's something wrong with them. I was very angry. In the end, I came to realize that we were all looking for some type of meaning in life, something that was fulfilling for us, that made us happy. Unfortunately, it didn't work for any of us. I was very, very fortunate in 1991 that I met Christ on campus. I went with them on 2 trips to Mexico. I am bilingual, I speak Spanish, so I went as an interpreter and helped out any way I could, and I loved it. During that time, however, I also met some very, very interesting people. I began to see some people that seemed to have the fulfillment and the joy and the peace in their lives that I had never had. I met the campus minister, who was a gentleman named Mike, and he seemed to really care about other people more than himself. He seemed to truly be at peace and to enjoy and love his life and what he was doing. Now, I have to admit that as an atheist and as a skeptic, I was somewhat skeptical of this gentleman. Some part of me said to myself, well, he's like that, but he's a minister, so really he's getting paid to do that, and if he wasn't like that, he wouldn't be doing a very good job. The interesting thing was that I met other people like myself. There were young folks just like me. I was 21 or 22, and there were folks about my age who really seemed to have fulfillment, joy, and peace in their lives, and they really seemed to care about others more than they cared about themselves. I remember a young man named Kevin and a young lady named Katie who were in that group that went to Mexico, and I found out that they were also peaceful. They were loving. They seemed genuinely concerned and caring about me. I think that a lot of times as young people we're very self-absorbed. That changes immediately once you have children, when you realize you're no longer the most important person on the planet. But these young people, even though they were the same age and in the same circumstances as I am, were more focused on others than themselves. I found that to be something truly special and something that I really sought for. I was very fortunate to find out that Katie and Kevin had that type of life and that type of outlook because they were Christians. Like the minister Mike, they believed in Jesus Christ. They believed that God is alive and Jesus is his son, and that we can have peace in this life and eternally through knowing Jesus Christ. I studied and went through some trials and had lots of questions, as Mike can recall, but eventually I decided in 1991 to accept Jesus Christ as my Savior. I have to say that that was the biggest turning point in my life, and I've led a happy and fulfilling, meaningful life since then. It's not been perfect. If I look like a person who hasn't made any mistakes, you're looking at me wrong. I've made tons of mistakes in my life. Some of them I'm not proud to talk about. I'm not a person who is perfect, but I realize that I'm a perfect person who is perfectly forgiven because God has allowed his son to sacrifice himself for the things that I've done. So I have to look at my brother. We were very similar in many ways. In some ways we were different. We both reacted to the abuse that we had suffered as kids in the same way. However, when I became a Christian, I was eager to tell my family members about it. I was a little bit surprised, I guess, to find that they were not nearly as enthused or excited to learn that Jesus is the Son of God. I remember my brother reacted by saying, he scoffed at me. He said, well, that's just a crutch for people who can't manage to do well themselves in life. They need that as a crutch. I learned soon, as I grew in life, that there are many crutches in life. Drugs and alcohol are a couple of them, but Jesus Christ is not a crutch. He's the only way that we can truly find fulfillment in our lives. So, needless to say, my brother did not join me in this experience of becoming a Christian. The things that I had experienced and experimented with for some time, some of them longer than others, casual sex and drugs and alcohol, I turned away from them. I wasn't perfect at first. I'm not going to pretend like I was sinless the moment I became a Christian, because I wasn't. But I did eventually turn away from these things, and my brother, unfortunately, continued to get deeper and deeper into them, I think. Eventually, he was diagnosed with a psychological disorder. He began to receive prescription drugs. At some point, he began overdosing on them and then turned to street drugs as well. So sadly, when the news reached me about what had happened, it was very unsettling. It made me very angry. But I can't say that it was unexpected. I had known that he'd been troubled for many years. I was angry. I was angry that I never got a chance to talk to him, to see if I could help him, that I never got a chance to say goodbye. But I eventually realized that many, many people, including his wife, had tried to help him, but he wasn't ready to make the changes himself. I think that the important point that I want to make from this is that Christ, working through Christ on Campus, made a difference in who I am today and where I am today. Without the influence of Christ in my life, I suspect that my life would have turned out very much like my brother's, since we were so similar as kids, went through the same experiences, and tried the same things. I'm very, very fortunate, and I'm very thankful that I was able to meet an organization like Christ on Campus, where I did learn the truth about God, and did learn that there's a way to have a peaceful life, and to be at peace with life, because that's what I really wanted, I think, and never was able to find until I became a Christian. I'm very, very sad that my brother probably wasn't able to experience that as well. But I'd like to take this opportunity to let anybody know who's listening to this video. If you are not in a peaceful relationship with God, or you're an atheist like I was, or whatever your circumstances are, please, 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 please give consideration to the Bible. Please look into the facts that I've talked to you about, and please test them for yourselves. I did. I'm a very analytical person, and I was led to believe that the Bible is true, that Christ was a real person, that he walked on the earth and performed miracles, that he was the Son of God like he said he was, and that he was actually able to forgive us for the things that we've done and allow us to live a peaceful life with him because of who he was. Please, please, I'm not talking to you as a perfect person. I'm not talking to you as a minister, because I'm not. I'm a principal at a school in Houston. It's not my business. I don't have anything to gain from it. But please listen to my words. I really believe that Christ can help all of us lead a peaceful and a meaningful life. I want to say that I love Christ on Campus and the folks that are involved very, very much. I became a contributor as soon as I graduated from college, and I've continued to do so throughout the years. I would encourage all of you to do so as well. Christ on Campus is making a difference in people's lives, and I want everybody to know that. Finally, I'd like to let everybody know that I miss you. I love you very much. I still consider Arkansas home, and someday I would like to return there. Christ on Campus, folks in Arkansas, this is Mickey, signing off until next time. I love you. Goodbye.